Emma Collins thought her life was perfect. Married to Nathaniel Collins, a tech billionaire, she had everything anyone could ever dream of: wealth, beauty, and a growing family. But behind the doors of their luxurious mansion, Nathaniel was falling in love with someone else. Sophia Walker, a savvy entrepreneur, had captured his heart, and soon she wasn't just a mistress. She was the woman who would destroy everything Emma had built. What followed was a devastating betrayal that would send Emma into a fight for her future, while Nathaniel's empire crumbled under the weight of his own choices. This is the story of a billionaire's fall from grace, a wife's revenge, and the woman who thought she could have it all. But karma had other plans. For years, Emma Collins had lived a life that many would envy. She was married to Nathaniel Collins, a tech billionaire who had made his fortune in artificial intelligence and revolutionized the industry with his groundbreaking innovations. Their life was one of luxury, an expansive mansion nestled in the hills, a fleet of high-end cars, exclusive vacations, and an endless circle of high society events. Emma had been a former model, her beauty and elegance making her a perfect match for Nathaniel's world. They appeared to be the picture of success, a power couple admired by friends and strangers alike. Emma was not only Nathaniel's wife, but also his partner in life. She supported his dreams, helped manage his charitable endeavors, and often attended his business functions. Together, they had a young daughter, Mia, and Emma was currently pregnant with their second child, a son. She was thrilled about their growing family, believing that life would only get better as they expanded their little world. But despite the outer appearances of happiness, something was changing beneath the surface. It started slowly at first. Nathaniel, once loving and attentive, began to pull away. His work hours increased and he was often traveling, leaving Emma to manage the household and raise their daughter alone. At first, she didn't think much of it. He had always been a driven man, always striving for more. But she understood that ambition. It was what had made him successful. However, as weeks turned into months, the distance between them grew. Emma found herself alone more often than not, navigating the complexities of pregnancy without the support of her husband. She brushed off the feeling of neglect, convincing herself it was just a phase. After all, Nathaniel had a business to run. He was busy, and she had everything she could ever need. Then came the strange behavior. Nathaniel's phone buzzed constantly, more so than usual, and whenever she walked into the room, he would quickly silence it or hide it from view. He started spending more time in his office, locking the door behind him, and when he did make time for Emma, his attention seemed divided. He was often distracted, as if his mind was somewhere else. The rare moments they shared felt like they were just passing through time, with no real connection. There was no longer the warmth that had once existed between them. Emma tried to ignore it, focusing instead on her pregnancy and taking care of their daughter. But the feeling of unease continued to grow. One night, while Nathaniel was in the shower, she picked up his phone off the counter, intending only to send a quick text to his assistant. But when she glanced at the screen, she saw something she never expected. A series of text messages from someone named Sophia Walker filled the screen. They were flirtatious, intimate, and all too familiar. Emma's heart sank as she scrolled through the messages, sweet nothings, plans to meet up, and inside jokes that Emma had never heard of. Her stomach twisted in knots as she realized that Nathaniel was having an affair. At first, she couldn't bring herself to believe it. It had to be a misunderstanding, right? Maybe these were just harmless texts, a flirtation that didn't mean anything. But deep down, Emma knew better. She had seen the signs for months, the late nights, the evasions, the secrecy. She had suspected something was off, but now she had the undeniable proof. Her world, the one she thought was so perfect, began to crumble. In the days that followed, Emma confronted Nathaniel about the texts. She waited until they were alone, her heart pounding in her chest. His response was cold, almost indifferent. He didn't apologize or seem remorseful. He simply confirmed what she already knew. Nathaniel was in love with Sophia and had been for months. It wasn't just an affair, it was a full-blown relationship. He had fallen out of love with Emma, and now he wanted to be with someone else. The life they had built together suddenly felt like a lie. Emma couldn't believe what was happening. Her mind raced as she tried to process the betrayal. She was pregnant, vulnerable, and had trusted Nathaniel with everything. The pain was overwhelming, but even more so was the shock that the man she had loved for so long could betray her so callously. She had given him everything, her youth, her beauty, her devotion, and now he was walking away without a second thought. The sense of betrayal cut deeper than any wound, and as Emma stood there trying to hold back her tears, she realized that her life was about to change forever. Sophia Walker was not what most people would consider an ordinary mistress. At 28, she had already made a name for herself in the tech world, carving out a reputation as a savvy entrepreneur and investor. Tall, attractive, and always impeccably dressed, Sophia exuded an air of confidence that seemed to draw people toward her. Yet, despite her professional success, it was Nathaniel Collins who had captured her attention and her heart. What began as a simple business connection between them had quickly turned into something more, a relationship that would ultimately shatter the life of his wife, Emma. Sophia had first met Nathaniel 2 years earlier at an exclusive tech summit in San Francisco. She had been invited to speak on a panel about the future of artificial intelligence, while Nathaniel was the keynote speaker. It was at the networking event afterward that their chemistry was undeniable. Nathaniel was captivated by Sophia's intelligence and sharp wit, while she admired his vision and his ability to dominate the industry. Their conversation flowed effortlessly and they exchanged numbers, discussing everything from business opportunities to personal interests. For months after that meeting, their connection remained professional. Nathaniel would occasionally reach out for advice on his latest projects, and Sophia would offer her insights. But as time passed, their conversations became more personal. Nathaniel confided in her about the pressures of his marriage, the strain of balancing his billion-dollar empire with family obligations. Sophia, in turn, shared her own stories of working long hours in the tech world, juggling the demands of building her own company while trying to stay true to herself. There was a sense of camaraderie between them, an unspoken understanding that drew them closer. As they spent more time together, the line between professional and personal began to blur. Nathaniel found solace in Sophia's company. She was a refreshing change from Emma, who, despite her beauty and grace, seemed to be more focused on family and charity work than the high-stakes business world Nathaniel thrived in. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed to understand him in ways Emma never could. She wasn't just interested in his wealth or his status. She genuinely admired his mind and the way he approached business. That, in Nathaniel's eyes, was a rarity. The affair began innocently enough. Lunches in quiet, upscale restaurants, quick business meetings that often stretched into hours, and late-night phone calls where the lines between business and pleasure grew increasingly blurred. But soon, their professional relationship crossed the line into a full-blown romantic affair. The initial thrill of the forbidden seemed to intensify their connection, and they began meeting in secret, away from the prying eyes of the business world. Nathaniel became more and more consumed with Sophia, and as his feelings for her deepened, his relationship with Emma began to deteriorate. Sophia had always been ambitious, but her desire to be part of Nathaniel's world went beyond love. She wanted more. She wanted to control the narrative. She had always been a woman who knew how to use her looks and her intelligence to get ahead, and Nathaniel, with his billions and influence, was the perfect vehicle to launch her even higher. She wasn't just attracted to him emotionally. She saw him as a stepping stone to something even greater. Nathaniel's wealth and power were tools she planned to use, not just for herself, but for her own rising empire. As their relationship progressed, Sophia's role in Nathaniel's life grew more pronounced. She began attending high-profile events, with him showing up on his arm at galas, charity events, and even press conferences. The media quickly took notice of the couple, and rumors began to swirl. The once perfect image of Nathaniel and Emma was suddenly under scrutiny, with paparazzi capturing intimate moments between Nathaniel and Sophia. To the outside world, they appeared to be a perfect match, one that could potentially be more powerful and influential than Nathaniel's marriage ever had been. In private, Sophia pushed Nathaniel to take the next step, leave Emma, leave everything behind, and build a life with her. She had no patience for the slower, more deliberate process Nathaniel was trying to navigate. In her mind, Emma was a roadblock, a relic of Nathaniel's past that needed to be discarded in favor of something new and exciting. Sophia's influence over Nathaniel became undeniable. He began distancing himself from his wife, cancelling family events in favor of meeting Sophia or attending business functions with her by his side. Slowly but surely, the man who had once been so devoted to his family was unraveling, and Sophia was the catalyst. Yet there was something darker lurking beneath the surface of Sophia's seemingly perfect world. Her ambition wasn't just about rising through the ranks of the tech world, it was about taking everything. Her pursuit of Nathaniel wasn't just a matter of love, it was about power, about securing a future that no one could take from her. She had her sights set on Emma's life, the wealth, the status, the perfect family, and she was determined to get it. In her mind, Emma was a mere obstacle that would be removed when the time was right. But as Sophia pushed Nathaniel further into her world, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing a dangerous game, a game that would soon unravel for all of them. Emma's world was falling apart, and nothing could prepare her for the confrontation that awaited. She had discovered the affair, pieced together the evidence, and watched as Nathaniel's behavior grew colder and more distant with each passing day. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden, unexplained absences, they all led to the same painful conclusion. Nathaniel was in love with Sophia. Emma had no choice but to face the truth. She had to confront him, to demand an explanation, to fight for what she thought was still hers. One evening, as Nathaniel returned from another business trip, Emma knew the time had come. She had been planning it for days, running through the words in her mind, trying to prepare herself for the heartbreak that was inevitable. Mia, their daughter, was asleep in her room, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in the house. Emma sat in their living room, her mind racing, trying to steady the storm of emotions that threatened to overtake her. When Nathaniel walked through the door, his usual practiced smile faltered as soon as he saw the look on Emma's face. There was no warmth in her eyes, no trace of the woman who had once adored him. Instead, her gaze was cold and sharp, the kind of look that can only come from a person who has seen the truth and now has nothing left to lose. He dropped his briefcase on the floor and began to speak, but Emma raised her hand, cutting him off. "Don't," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "I know what's been going on." Nathaniel blinked, his eyes widening in feigned surprise. "What are you talking about, Emma?" "I'm talking about Sophia," she replied, her voice growing steadier. "I know about the affair, Nathaniel. The messages, the phone calls, the lies, I've seen it all." For a moment he stood there, caught off guard. His eyes darted around, clearly searching for the right words. But Emma wasn't giving him any room to hide, not this time. She had seen the signs for months, the growing distance between them, the way he started pulling away emotionally and physically. She had tried to ignore it, to dismiss it as a phase, as the pressures of his work or the stress of raising a family. But the truth was inescapable now. Nathaniel had fallen in love with someone else, and that someone wasn't her. Finally he sighed, the mask of indifference slipping. "I didn't want to hurt you, Emma," he said, his voice low. "But it's over between us. I'm in love with her." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She had expected them in some way, but hearing them spoken aloud felt like the ground beneath her feet had disappeared. "In love with her?" Emma repeated, almost laughing at the absurdity of it. "You're leaving me for her? After everything we've built together, you're just going to walk away?" Nathaniel's face tightened. "It's not like that. I've tried to make it work with you, but it's not enough anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything's fine when I'm not happy. I've fallen for someone else." Emma felt the sting of his words, but she pushed it aside, forcing herself to focus. "What about Mia?" she asked, her voice cracking. "What about our daughter? You're going to rip apart our family, Nathaniel, all for her?" Nathaniel looked away, his eyes avoiding hers. "I'll make sure Mia is taken care of," he said, though there was no conviction in his voice. "But I can't keep living a lie. I'm sorry, Emma. I never wanted to hurt you." The words felt hollow, meaningless. He wasn't sorry. If he had been, he would have tried to salvage their marriage. But he hadn't. Instead, he had allowed the affair to grow, to flourish, until it was too late to repair the damage. Emma felt her heart shatter, but she knew one thing for sure. She would never let him take their daughter from her. Not without a fight. Tears welled up in her eyes, but Emma quickly wiped them away. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break down. "You can't have it all, Nathaniel. You can't just walk away from your family and think, you can pick up the pieces later. This isn't just about you and Sophia. This is about Mia and me too." Nathaniel looked at her with a mixture of guilt and resignation, but there was no remorse in his eyes. Emma knew then that the man she had married was gone. He had chosen his path, and nothing would bring him back. The divorce process began soon, after that night, with both of them digging in their heels. Nathaniel wanted a quick, clean break, but Emma wasn't willing to let him off so easily. She had devoted years to their marriage, and now she would fight for everything she had worked so hard for. Her heart was broken, her world shattered, but she wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed, not after everything he had taken from her. As the divorce proceeded, Emma found herself facing a brutal, emotional battle. Nathaniel, determined to start his life with Sophia, pushed for full custody of Mia, trying to portray Emma as unstable, as someone who couldn't provide the life their daughter deserved. Emma, on the other hand, fought back with everything she had. She refused to let him take Mia away from her, not after everything he had already taken. She wasn't going to lose her family. But as the weeks dragged on, and the court dates loomed closer, Emma began to realize that this fight wasn't just about revenge. It was about rebuilding her life, about finding strength in herself that she never knew she had. No matter what Nathaniel did, no matter how hard he tried to erase the past, Emma was determined to move forward and to ensure that Mia would have the stability and love she needed, no matter what it took. In the months following the brutal confrontation, the world around Nathaniel Collins began to unravel in ways he could not have predicted. What had once seemed like a well-calculated escape from his failing marriage was quickly spiraling out of control. His relationship with Sophia, once the beacon of promise and excitement, was now fraught with complications. On the surface, it seemed as though they were still a picture-perfect couple. But beneath that glossy exterior, cracks were beginning to show. Nathaniel's business empire, once a symbol of immense wealth and innovation, was starting to falter. The tech world he had built from the ground up, the very world that had made him a billionaire, was now teetering on the edge of disaster. Investors who had long supported Nathaniel's ventures were beginning to lose faith. The whispers in the industry grew louder, rumors of internal conflicts, poor decision-making, and even hints of financial mismanagement. Nathaniel had always prided himself on being a visionary, a leader who could turn any situation into a success. But now, as his personal life disintegrated, so too did his once unshakable grip on the business world. The downfall was not immediate, but it was inevitable. The tech company Nathaniel had built with so much blood, sweat, and determination began to lose its edge. Key partnerships started to fracture, and with Sophia by his side, Nathaniel struggled to maintain his focus. She, who had once been so eager to elevate herself by aligning with Nathaniel's success, began showing her true colors. Sophia's ambition, once so alluring, was beginning to push Nathaniel further away. She was not the supportive partner he needed. Instead, she was a constant reminder of everything he had sacrificed: his family, his reputation, and his peace of mind. It didn't take long for the public to catch wind of the problems surrounding Nathaniel's company. News outlets began covering his legal battles, hinting at shady dealings and insider trading. What was once a thriving empire was now a sinking ship, and Nathaniel found himself in the middle of it all, powerless to stop the tide of destruction. Sophia, who had been by his side throughout his downfall, suddenly became less visible. The glamorous woman who had once been a constant fixture at his side during business functions, public events, and high-profile galas was now nowhere to be found. Rumors began to swirl about her involvement in Nathaniel's crumbling business practices. It wasn't long before whispers of financial misconduct surfaced, with insiders suggesting that Sophia had used Nathaniel's resources to fund her own ventures without his knowledge or consent. Her once glamorous image began to tarnish as investigations into her dealings became public. But it wasn't just the business world that was slipping through Nathaniel's fingers. His personal life, too, was becoming a shadow of what it had once been. Nathaniel had promised Sophia a life of luxury, a life that would far surpass the comforts of his marriage to Emma. But the harsh reality was that his financial situation was rapidly deteriorating. The lavish vacations, the private jets, the endless parties, they were all starting to slip away, replaced by a tightening grip of debt and scrutiny. Nathaniel had pushed Emma out of the picture, convinced that she was the source of all his unhappiness. But now he was starting to realize that Sophia, too, was not the solution to his problems. Sophia's departure, though subtle, came at a time when Nathaniel needed her the most. It wasn't a dramatic breakup, but rather a slow fading away. She stopped answering his calls. Her texts became increasingly cold and distant. The woman who had once been his confidant, his partner, was no longer interested in the man who had once been a billionaire. The idea of a future with Nathaniel was no longer appealing to her. Without his wealth, without his influence, there was nothing left for Sophia to gain. The woman who had lured him away from his family was now gone, leaving Nathaniel to face the consequences of his decisions alone. With Sophia out of the picture, Nathaniel found himself facing a harsh reality. His business was in shambles, his reputation was tarnished beyond repair, and the woman he had betrayed, Emma, was thriving without him. In the midst of the chaos, he turned to Emma, hoping that somehow she could provide him with a lifeline. But Emma, having found her strength and confidence again, refused to offer him any sympathy. Emma had rebuilt her life from the rubble of their broken marriage. Her business ventures were flourishing, and her focus had shifted entirely to her children and her personal growth. She had no intention of returning to the man who had betrayed her, and she wasn't about to let Nathaniel's misfortunes drag her back into his world. She had moved on, and in doing so had found a sense of peace that Nathaniel could never offer her. As the months passed, Nathaniel's world continued to collapse. Lawsuits piled up, legal battles intensified, and his once untouchable fortune evaporated. He had lost everything, his family, his wealth, his reputation, and was left with nothing but the wreckage of his decisions. Sophia had disappeared from the public eye, and Nathaniel was left alone to face the consequences of his own making. Meanwhile, Emma was living a life far removed from the pain and betrayal that had once defined her. Her children were thriving, her business was flourishing, and she had begun to rediscover her own happiness. While Nathaniel and Sophia were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives, Emma had found something far more valuable: peace, strength, and a future that was hers to build. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with them both. As the dust settled from the chaos Nathaniel had created, the truth became undeniable. His fall from grace was complete, and there was no escaping the consequences of his actions. What had once seemed like a smooth transition, leaving Emma for Sophia, had turned into a nightmare of legal battles, lost fortunes, and broken relationships. His tech empire, once revered and admired, was a shadow of its former self. The investors he had once charmed with promises of success had pulled out, the media had turned on him, and his personal life was nothing more than a cautionary tale. But perhaps the hardest truth for Nathaniel to swallow, Emma, for all her pain and heartbreak, had managed to reclaim her life. After the divorce, she had focused on her children, her business, and her own growth. What had once seemed like a devastating loss was now the catalyst for her personal transformation. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Mia and their newborn son, Jacob, had become the center of her world. Emma poured herself into motherhood, making sure that her children felt loved, safe, and supported in ways that Nathaniel had never been able to provide. She was no longer the woman she had been when she was married to him, the vulnerable, heartbroken wife who had relied on Nathaniel's wealth and influence. She had built something for herself, something that could not be taken away. Her business? Ventures flourished in ways she had never imagined. What started as a small project to support herself and her children had turned into a booming enterprise. Emma's creativity, coupled with her ability to connect with people, had led her to create a brand that was uniquely hers. It wasn't just about making money, it was about empowering others, especially women, to take control of their own destinies. Her social media presence grew exponentially, and soon, Emma was being invited to speak at conferences, featured in magazines, and recognized as a rising star in the business world. In the meantime, Nathaniel's downfall continued. His attempts to salvage what little was left of his company were futile. He had lost the trust of the people who had once supported him, and his reputation was tarnished beyond repair. No matter how hard he tried to rebuild, there was no going back to the man he had been before the affair. The consequences of his betrayal had followed him into every corner of his life, and now even his financial empire was slipping through his fingers. Sophia, once the woman he thought would be his salvation, had vanished into the shadows. Her involvement in his business practices had been exposed, and the media quickly turned on her as well. Investigations into her role in his financial troubles had painted a picture of greed and manipulation. The woman who had been the catalyst for his destruction was now just another casualty of the empire he had built on ambition and deceit. She had disappeared from the public eye, leaving behind only a trail of broken promises and shattered illusions. As the months passed, Nathaniel was left with nothing. No company, no fortune, and no family. He had pushed Emma away in his quest for something new, something exciting, and now he was paying the price. His personal life was a mess, his business was in ruins, and he was alone. Sophia had gone silent, and he couldn't even rely on the people who had once admired him. In his pursuit of something he thought was better, Nathaniel had lost everything that truly mattered. On the other hand, Emma's life was now firmly rooted in a place of strength and independence. She had rebuilt herself from the ground up, but, unlike Nathaniel, she hadn't done it at anyone's expense. She had built something with her own two hands, something that was hers and hers alone. It wasn't just about the material success she had achieved, though that was significant. It was about the self-respect and dignity she had regained. Emma had taken back control of her narrative, refusing to let Nathaniel or anyone else define her. She had learned that happiness didn't come from wealth or status. It came from within, from the ability to move forward after the worst of life's challenges. And it wasn't just her business or her children that Emma had reclaimed. It was her sense of self. She had been broken once, but she had put the pieces back together stronger than before. Where Nathaniel had been consumed by his need for more wealth, more power, more validation, Emma had learned to appreciate the quiet moments, the simple pleasures that life had to offer. She was no longer defined by the man who had betrayed her. She was defined by the woman she had become. The divorce had been painful, but it had also been a turning point. Nathaniel had believed that he could walk away from his responsibilities and his family, that the grass would be greener on the other side. But as his life fell apart around him, he realized the harsh truth. He had made a grave mistake. Emma, though wounded, had found a way to rise above it all. She had let go of the past, not for him but for herself. She had moved on, and in doing so, had created a life filled with purpose and fulfillment. In the end, it was clear who had won. Karma had a way of catching up with people, and for Nathaniel, it had come in the form of loss, of everything he had once held dear. For Emma, it had come as a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and heartbreak, there was always the possibility of a new beginning.